Bolivia.
Coordinates: 16 deg 4243 s 64 deg 3958 w/16.712 deg s 64.666 deg w/-16.712 -64.666. Bolivia, bəʻlɪviə / Spanish, Quechua, Buliwya, Aymara, Wuliwya, officially known as the Plurinational State of Bolivia, Spanish, Estado Plurinacional de Bolivia locally, is a landlocked country located in Central South America. It is bordered by Brazil to the north and east, Paraguay and Argentina to the south, Chile to the southwest, and Peru to the west. Prior to European colonization, the Andean region of Bolivia was a part of the Inca Empire, the largest state in pre-Columbian America. The conquistadors took control of the region in the 16th century. During most of the Spanish colonial period, this territory was known as Upper Peru and was under the administration of the Viceroyalty of Peru, which included most of Spain's South American colonies, although the area enjoyed substantial autonomy under the jurisdiction of the Royal Court of Charcas. After the first call for independence in 1809, 16 years of war followed before the establishment of the Republic, named for Simon Bolivar, on August 6, 1825. Bolivia has struggled through periods of political instability and economic woes. Bolivia is a democratic republic that is divided into 9 departments. Its geography is varied from the peaks of the Andes in the west, to the eastern lowlands, situated within the Amazon basin. It is a developing country, with a medium Human Development Index score, and a poverty level of 53%. Its main economic activities include agriculture, forestry, fishing, mining, and manufacturing goods such as textiles, clothing, refined metals, and refined petroleum. Bolivia is very wealthy in minerals, especially tin. The Bolivian population, estimated at 10 million, is multiethnic, including Amerindians, Mestizos, Europeans, Asians and Africans. The main language spoken is Spanish, although the Guarani, Aymara and Quechua languages are also common, and all 4, as well as 34 other indigenous languages, are official. The large number of different cultures within Bolivia has contributed greatly to a wide diversity in fields such as art, cuisine, literature, and music.
Etymology.
Bolivia is named after Simon Bolivar, a leader in the Spanish-American Wars of Independence. The leader of Venezuela, Antonio José de Sucre, had been given the option by Bolivar to either keep Upper to Peru, present-day Bolivia, under the newly formed Republic of Peru, to unite with the United Provinces of Rio de la Plata, or to formally declare its independence from the Viceroyalty of Peru that had dominated most of the region. Sucre opted to create a new nation and, with local support, named it in honor of Simon Bolivar. The original name was Republic of Bolivar. Some days later, Congressman Manuel Martin Cruz proposed, if from Romulus comes Rome, then from Bolivar comes Bolivia, Spanish, C de Romulo Roma, de Bolivar Bolivia. The name was approved by the Republic on October 3, 1825. In 2009, a new constitution changed the country's name to the Plurinational State of Bolivia in recognition of the multi-ethnic nature of the country and the enhanced position of Bolivia's indigenous peoples under the new constitution.
History. Pre-colonial.
The region now known as Bolivia had been occupied for over 2,000 years when the Aymara arrived. Present-day Aymara associate themselves with an advanced civilization situated at Tiwanaku, in western Bolivia. The capital city of Tiwanaku dates from as early as 1500 BC when it was a small, agriculturally based village. The community grew to urban proportions between AD 600 and AD 800, becoming an important regional power in the southern Andes. According to early estimates, the city covered approximately 6.5 square kilometers, 2.5 square miles, at its maximum extent and had between 15,000 to 30,000 inhabitants. In 1996, satellite imaging was used to map the extent of fossilized sucacalis, flooded raised fields, across the 3 primary valleys of Tiwanaku, arriving at population carrying capacity estimates of anywhere between 285,000 and 1,482,000 people. Around AD 400, Tiwanaku went from being a locally dominant force to a predatory state. Tiwanaku expanded its reaches into the Yungas and brought its culture and way of life to many other cultures in Peru, Bolivia, and Chile. Tiwanaku was not a violent culture in many respects. In order to expand its reach, Tiwanaku exercised great political astuteness, creating colonies, fostering trade agreements, which made the other cultures rather dependent, and instituting state cults. The empire continued to grow with no end in sight. William H. Spell states Tiwanaku underwent a dramatic transformation between AD 600 and 700 that established new monumental standards for civic architecture and greatly increased the resident population. Tiwanaku continued to absorb cultures rather than eradicate them. Archaeologists note a dramatic adoption of Tiwanaku ceramics into the cultures which became part of the Tiwanaku Empire. Tiwanaku's power was further solidified through the trade it implemented among the cities within its empire. Tiwanaku's elites gained their status through the surplus food they controlled, collected from outlying regions and then redistributed to the general populace. Further, this elite's control of llama herds became the powerful control mechanism as llamas were essential for carrying goods between the civic center and the periphery. These herds also came to symbolize class distinctions between the commoners and the elites. Through this control and manipulation of surplus resources, the elite's power continued to grow until about AD 950. At this time a dramatic shift in climate occurred, causing a significant drop in precipitation in the Titicaca Basin, believed by archaeologists to have been on the scale of a major drought. As the rainfall decreased, many of the cities further away from Lake Titicaca began to tender less foodstuffs to the elites. As the surplus of food decreased, and thus the amount available to underpin their power, the control of the elites began to falter. The capital city became the last place viable for food production due to the resiliency of the raised field method of agriculture. Tiwanaku disappeared around AD 1000 because food production, the main source of the power elites control, dried up. The area remained uninhabited for centuries thereafter. Between 1438 and 1527, the Inca Empire, during its last great expansion, gained control over much of what is now western Bolivia. The Incas would not maintain control of the region for long, as the rapidly expanding Inca Empire was internally weak.
Colonial Period.
The Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire began in 1524, and was mostly completed by 1533. The territory now called Bolivia was known as Upper Peru, and was under the authority of the Viceroy of Lima. Local government came from the Audiencia de Charcas located in Chuquisaca, La Plata, modern Sucre. Founded in 1545 as a mining town, Potosi soon produced fabulous wealth, becoming the largest city in the New World with a population exceeding 150,000 people. By the late 16th century, Bolivian silver was an important source of revenue for the Spanish Empire. A steady stream of natives served as labor force under the brutal, slave conditions of the Spanish version of the pre-Columbian draft system called the Mita. Upper Peru was bounded to Viceroyalty of the Rio de la Plata in 1776. Tupac Katari led the indigenous rebellion that laid siege to La Paz in March 1781, during which 20,000 people died. As Spanish royal authority weakened during the Napoleonic Wars, sentiment against colonial rule grew.
Independence and subsequent wars.
The struggle for independence started in the city of Sucre on May 25, 1809, with the first cry of freedom in Latin America. Chuquisaca Revolution. Chuquisaca was then the name of the city. That revolution, which created a local government junta, was followed by the La Paz Revolution, during which Bolivia actually declared independence. Both revolutions were short-lived, and defeated by the Spanish authorities, but the following year the Spanish-American Wars of Independence raged across the continent. Bolivia was captured and recaptured many times during the war by the Royalists and Patriots. Buenos Aires sent 3 military campaigns, all of which were defeated, and eventually limited itself to protecting the national borders at Salta. Bolivia was finally freed of Royalist dominion by Antonio José de Sucre, with a military campaign coming from the north in support of the campaign of Simón Bolívar. After 16 years of war, the republic was proclaimed on August 6, 1825. In 1836, Bolivia, under the rule of Marshal Andrés de Santa Cruz, invaded Peru to reinstall the deposed president, General Luis José de Orbegoso. Peru and Bolivia formed the Peru-Bolivian Confederation, with de Santa Cruz as a supreme protector. Following tension between the Confederation and Chile, Chile declared war on December 28, 1836. Argentina, Chile's ally, declared war on the Confederation on May 9, 1837. The Peruvian-Bolivian forces achieved several major victories during the War of the Confederation, the defeat of the Argentine expedition and the defeat of the first Chilean expedition on the fields of Palcarpata near the city of Arequipa. On the same field, the Chilean and Peruvian rebel armies surrendered unconditionally and signed the Palcarpata Treaty. The treaty stipulated that Chile would withdraw from Peru-Bolivia, Chile would return captured Confederate ships, economic relations would be normalized, and the Confederation would pay Peruvian debt to Chile. In Chile, public outrage over the treaty forced the government to reject it. Chile organized a second attack on the Confederation and defeated it in the Battle of Yungay. After this defeat, Santa Cruz resigned and went to exile in Ecuador and then Paris, and the Peruvian-Bolivian Confederation was dissolved. Following the independence of Peru, Peruvian President General Agustín Guimara invaded Bolivia. The Peruvian army was decisively defeated at the Battle of Inglaviá on November 20, 1841, where Guimara was killed. The Bolivian army under General José Bolivian then mounted a counteroffensive, capturing the Peruvian port of Arica. Later, both sides signed a peace treaty in 1842, putting a final end to the war. A period of political and economic instability in the early to mid-19th century weakened Bolivia. In addition, during the War of the Pacific, 1879-83, Chile occupied vast territories rich in natural resources southwest of Bolivia, including the Bolivian coast. Chile took control of today's Chuquicamata area, the adjoining rich saltpeter, saltpeter, fields, and the port of Antofagasta among other Bolivian territories. Thus, since independence, Bolivia has lost over half of its territory to neighboring countries. It also lost the state of Acre, in the Acre War. Important because this region was known for its production of rubber. Peasants and the Bolivian army fought briefly, but after a few victories, and facing the prospect of a total war against Brazil, it was forced to sign the Treaty of Petrópolis in 1903, in which Bolivia lost this rich territory. Popular myth has it that Bolivian President Mariano Melgarejo, 1864-71, traded the land for what he called a magnificent white horse, and Acre was subsequently flooded by Brazilians, which ultimately led to confrontation and fear of war with Brazil. In the late 19th century, an increase in the world price of silver brought Bolivia relative prosperity and political stability.
20th century.
During the early 20th century, tin replaced silver as the country's most important source of wealth. A succession of governments controlled by the economic and social elite followed laissez-faire capitalist policies through the first 30 years of the 20th century. Living conditions of the native people, who constitute most of the population, remain deplorable. With work opportunities limited to primitive conditions in the mines and in large estates having nearly feudal status, they had no access to education, economic opportunity, and political participation. Bolivia's defeat by Paraguay in the Chaco War, 1932-35, where Bolivia lost a great part of the Gran Chaco region in dispute, marked a turning point. The Revolutionary Nationalist Movement, MNR, the most historic political party, emerged as a broad-based party. Denied its victory in the 1951 presidential elections, the MNR led a successful revolution in 1952. Under President Victor Paz Estenssoro, the MNR, having strong popular pressure, introduced universal suffrage into its political platform and carried out a sweeping land reform promoting rural education and nationalization of the country's largest tin mines. 12 years of tumultuous rule left the MNR divided. In 1964, a military junta overthrew President Estenssoro at the outset of his third term. The 1969 death of President René Barrientos Ortuño, a former member of the junta who was elected president in 1966, led to a succession of weak governments. Alarmed by the rising popular assembly and the increase in the popularity of President Juan José Torres, the military, the MNR, and other installed Colonel, later General, Hugo Banzer Suarez as president in 1971. He returned to the presidency in 1985 to 1989, 1993 to 1997, and 2002 to 2003. The CIA had been active in providing finances and training to the Bolivian military dictatorship in 1960s. The revolutionary leader Che Guevara was killed by a team of CIA officers and members of the Bolivian army on October 9, 1967, in Buliwya. Felix Rodriguez was a CIA officer on the team with the Bolivian army that captured and shot Guevara. Rodriguez said that after he received a Bolivian presidential execution order, he told the soldier who pulled the trigger to aim carefully, to remain consistent with the Bolivian government story that Che had been killed in action during a clash with the Bolivian army. Rodriguez said the U.S. government had wanted Che in Panama, and I could have tried to falsify the command to the troops, and got Che to Panama as the U.S. government said they had wanted, said Mr. Rodriguez, but he chose to let history run its course as desired by Bolivia. Elections in 1979 and 1981 were inconclusive and marked by fraud. There were coups d'état, counter-coups, and caretaker governments. In 1980, General Luis Garcia Meza Tejada carried out a ruthless and violent coup d'état that did not have popular support. He pacified the people by promising to remain in power only for 1 year. At the end of the year, he staged a televised rally to claim popular support and announced, "Bueno, me quedo," or, "All right, I'll stay." After a military rebellion forced out Meza in 1981, 3 other military governments in 14 months struggled with Bolivia's growing problems. Unrest forced the military to convoke the Congress elected in 1980 and allow it to choose a new chief executive. In October 1982, Hernan Siles Soto again became president, 22 years after the end of his first term of office, 1956-60.
Democratic transition.
Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada pursued an aggressive economic and social reform agenda. The most dramatic reform was the capitalization program, under which investors, typically foreign, acquired 50% ownership and management control of public enterprises in return for agreed-upon capital investments. In 1993, Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada ran for president in alliance with the Tupac Katari Revolutionary Liberation Movement, which inspired indigenous sensitive and multicultural aware policies. In 1993, Sanchez de Lozada introduced the Plan de Todos, which led to the decentralization of government, introduction of intercultural bilingual education, implementation of agrarian legislation, and privatization of state-owned businesses. The plan explicitly stated that Bolivian citizens would own a minimum of 51% of enterprises. Under the plan, most state-owned enterprises, SOEs, though not mines, were sold. This privatization of SOEs led to innovative neoliberal structuring that acknowledged a diverse population within Bolivia. The law of popular participation gave municipalities the responsibility of maintaining various infrastructures and offering services, health, education, systems of irrigation, which stripped the responsibility away from the state. The reforms and economic restructuring were strongly opposed by certain segments of society, which instigated frequent and sometimes violent protests, particularly in La Paz and the Chapare coca growing region, from 1994 through 1996. During this time, the umbrella labor organization of Bolivia, the Central Obra Boliviana, COB, became increasingly unable to effectively challenge government policy. A teacher strike in 1995 was defeated because the COB could not marshal the support of many of its members, including construction and factory workers. In the 1997 elections, General Hugo Banzer, leader of the Nationalist Democratic Action Party, ADN, and former dictator, 1971-78, won 22% of the vote, while the MNR candidate won 18%. At the outset of his government, President Banzer launched a policy of using special police units to physically eradicate the illegal coca of the Chapare region. the mayor of Jaime Paz Zamora remained the coalition partner throughout the Banzer government, supporting this policy, called the Dignity Plan. The Banzer government basically continued the free market and privatization policies of its predecessor. The relatively robust economic growth of the mid-1990s continued until about the third year of its term in office. After that, regional, global and domestic factors contributed to a decline in economic growth. Financial crises in Argentina and Brazil, lower world prices for export commodities, and reduced employment in the cocoa sector depressed the Bolivian economy. The public also perceived a significant amount of public sector corruption. These factors contributed to increasing social protests during the second half of Banzer's term. Between January 1999 and April 2000, large-scale protests erupted in Cochabamba, Bolivia's third-largest city, in response to the privatization of water resources by foreign companies and the subsequent doubling of water prices. On August 6, 2001, Banzer resigned from office after being diagnosed with cancer. He died less than a year later. Vice President Jorge Fernando Quiroga Ramirez completed the final year of his term. In the June 2002 national elections, former President Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada, MNR, placed first with 22.5% of the vote, followed by coca advocate and native peasant leader Evo Morales, Movement Towards Socialism, MAS, with 20.9%. A July agreement between the MNR and the fourth-place mayor, which had again been led in the election by former President Jaime Paz Zamora, virtually ensured the election of Sanchez de Lozada in the congressional runoff, and on August 6 he was sworn in for the second time. The MNR platform featured three overarching objectives: economic reactivation and job creation, anti-corruption, and social inclusion. In 2003 the Bolivian gas conflict broke out. On October 12, 2003 the government imposed martial law in El Alto after 16 people were shot by the police and several dozen wounded in violent clashes. Faced with the option of resigning or more bloodshed, Sanchez de Lozada offered his resignation in a letter to an emergency session of Congress. After his resignation was accepted and his vice president, Carlos Mesa, invested, he left on a commercially scheduled flight for the United States. The country's internal situation became unfavorable for such political action on the international stage. After a resurgence of gas protests in 2005, Carlos Mesa attempted to resign in January 2005, but his offer was refused by Congress. On March 22, 2005, after weeks of New Street protests from organizations accusing Mesa of bowing to U.S. corporate interests, Mesa again offered his resignation to Congress, which was accepted on June 10. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Eduardo Rodriguez, was sworn as interim president to succeed the outgoing Carlos Mesa. Mobilizing against neoliberalism as an enemy of socialism, the indigenous population of the Andean region was not able to benefit from government reforms. Evo Morales won the 2005 presidential election with 53.7% of the votes, an absolute majority, unusual in Bolivian elections. On May 1, 2006. Morales caused controversy when he announced his intent to renationalize Bolivian hydrocarbon assets. Fulfilling a campaign promise, on August 6, 2006, Morales opened the Bolivian Constituent Assembly to begin writing a new constitution aimed at giving more power to the indigenous majority. In August 2007, more conflicts arose in Sucre, as the city demanded the discussion of the seat of government inside the assembly, hoping the executive and legislative branches could return to the city, but the assembly and the government said this demand was overwhelmingly impractical and politically undesirable. In May 2008, Evo Morales was a signatory to the UNASUR Constitutive Treaty of the Union of South American Nations. In the 2009 national general elections, Evo Morales was re-elected with 64.22% of the vote. His party, Movement for Socialism, also won a two-thirds majority in both houses of the National Congress.
Geography.
Bolivia is located in the central zone of South America, between 57-26-69-38 and 9-38-22-53s. With an area of 1,098,581 square kilometers, 424,164 square miles, Bolivia is the world's 28th largest country, extending from the central Andes through part of the Gran Chaco as far as the Amazon. The geographic center of the country is the so-called Puerto Estrella, star port on the Rio Grande, in Nuflo de Chavez Province, Santa Cruz Department. The geography of the country exhibits a great variety of terrains and climates. Bolivia has a high level of biodiversity, considered one of the greatest in the world, as well as several ecoregions with ecological subunits such as the Altiplano, tropical rainforests, including Amazon rainforest, dry valleys, and the Caquetania, which is a tropical savanna. These areas feature enormous variations in altitude, from an elevation of 6,542 meters, 21,463 feet, above sea level in Nevado Sajama to nearly 70 meters, 230 feet, along the Paraguay River. Although a country of great geographic diversity, Bolivia has remained a landlocked country since the War of the Pacific. Bolivia can be divided into three physiographic regions. The Andean region in the southwest spans 28% of the national territory, extending over 307,603 square kilometers, 118,766 square miles. This area is located above 3,000 meters, 9,800 feet, altitude and is located between two big Andean chains, the Cordillera Occidental, Western Range and the Cordillera Central, Central Range, with some of the highest spots in the Americas such as the Nevado Sajama, with an altitude of 6,542 meters, 21,463 feet, and the Illimani, at 6,462 meters, 21,201 feet. Also located in the Cordillera Central is Lake Titicaca, the highest commercially navigable lake in the world and the largest lake in South America. The lake is shared with Peru. Also in this region are the Altiplano and the Salar de Uyuni, which is the largest salt flat in the world and an important source of lithium. The Subandean region in the center and south of the country is an intermediate region between the Altiplano and the Eastern Llanos Plain. This region comprises 13% of the territory of Bolivia, extending over 142,815 kilometers to 55,141 square miles, and encompassing the Bolivian valleys and the Yungas region. It is distinguished by its farming activities and its temperate climate. The Llanos region in the northeast comprises 59% of the territory, with 648,163 kilometers to 250,257 square miles. It is located to the north of the Cordillera Central and extends from the Andean foothills to the Paraguay River. It is a region of flat land and small plateaus, all covered by extensive rainforests containing enormous biodiversity. The region is below 400 meters, 1,300 feet, above sea level. Bolivia has three drainage basins. The first is the Amazon Basin, also called the North Basin, 724,000 kilometers to 280,000 square miles, /66% of the territory. The rivers of this basin generally have big meanders which form lakes such as Morello Lake in Pando Department. The main Bolivian tributary to the Amazon Basin is the Mamor River, with a length of 2,000 kilometers, 1,200 miles, running north to the confluence with the Beni River, 1,113 kilometers, 692 miles, in length and the second most important river of the country. The Beni River, along with the Madeira River, forms the main tributary of the Amazon River. From east to west, the basin is formed by other important rivers, such as the Madre de Dios River, the Orthon River, the Ibina River, the Ata River, and the Guapo River. The most important lakes are Rucacuado Lake, Ragagua Lake, and Jara Lake. The second is the Rio de la Plata Basin, also called the South Basin, 229,500 kilometers to 88,600 square miles, /21% of the territory. The tributaries in this basin are in general less abundant than the ones forming the Amazon Basin. The Rio de la Plata Basin is mainly formed by the Paraguay River, Pilcomayo River, and Bermejo River. The most important lakes are Uberaba Lake and Mandiore Lake, both located in the Bolivian marshland. The third basin is the Central Basin, which is an endorheic basin, 145,081 square kilometers, 56,016 square miles, /13% of the territory. The Altiplano has large numbers of lakes and rivers that do not run into any ocean because they are enclosed by the Andean Mountains. The most important river is the Desaguadero River, with a length of 436 kilometers, 271 miles, the longest river of the Altiplano. It begins in Lake Titicaca and then runs in a southeast direction to Pupo Lake. The basin is then formed by Lake Titicaca, Lake Pupo, the Desaguadero River, and Great Salt Flats, including the Salar de Uyuni and Coipasa Lake.
Sustaining water supplies.
Deforestation in upper river basins has caused environmental problems, including soil erosion and declining water quality. An innovative project to try and remedy this situation involves landholders in upstream areas being paid by downstream water users to conserve forests. The landholders receive $20 to conserve the trees, avoid polluting livestock practices, and enhance the biodiversity and forest carbon on their land. They receive $30, which purchases a beehive, to compensate for conservation for 2 hectares of water-sustaining forest for 5 years. Honey revenue per hectare of forest is $5 per year, so within 5 years, the landholder has sold $50 of honey. The project is being conducted by Fundación Natural Bolivia and Rare Conservation, with support from the Climate and Development Knowledge Network.
Geology.
The geology of Bolivia comprises a variety of different lithologies as well as tectonic and sedimentary environments. On a synoptic scale, geological units coincide with topographical units. Most elementally, the country is divided into a mountainous western area affected by the subduction processes in the Pacific and an eastern lowlands of stable platforms and shields.
Climate.
The climate of Bolivia varies drastically from one ecoregion to the other, from the tropics in the eastern llanos to a polar climate in the western Andes. The summers are warm, humid in the east and dry in the west, with rains that often modify temperatures, humidity, winds, atmospheric pressure and evaporation, yielding very different climates in different areas. When the climatological phenomenon known as El Niño takes place, it causes great alterations in the weather. Winters are very cold in the west, and it snows in the mountain ranges, while in the western regions, windy days are more common. The autumn is dry in the non-tropical regions. Llanos. A humid tropical climate with an average temperature of 30 degc, 86 degf. The wind coming from the Amazon rainforest causes significant rainfall. In May, there is low precipitation because of dry winds, and most days have clear skies. Even so, winds from the south, called cirrazos, can bring cooler temperatures lasting several days. Altiplano. Desert polar climates, with strong and cold winds. The average temperature ranges from 15 to 20 degc. At night, temperatures descend drastically to slightly above 0 degc, while during the day, the weather is dry and solar radiation is high. Ground frosts occur every month, and snow is frequent. Valleys and yungas. Temperate climate. The humid northeastern winds are pushed to the mountains, making this region very humid and rainy. Temperatures are cooler at higher elevations. Snow occurs at altitudes of 2,000 meters, 6,600 feet. Chaco. Subtropical semi-arid climate. Rainy and humid in January and the rest of the year, with warm days and cool nights.
Biodiversity.
Bolivia, with an enormous variety of organisms and ecosystems, is part of the like-minded megadiverse countries. Bolivia's variable altitudes, ranging from 90 to 6,542 meters, 295 to 21,463 feet, above sea level, allow for a vast biologic diversity. The territory of Bolivia comprises 4 types of biomes, 32 ecological regions, and 199 ecosystems. Within this geographic area there are several natural parks and reserves such as the Noel Kempf Mercado National Park, the Madidi National Park, the Tunari National Park, the Eduardo Avaroa Andean Fauna National Reserve, and the Cayo del Gran Chaco National Park and Integrated Management Natural Area, among others. Bolivia boasts over 200,000 species of seeds, including over 1,200 species of fern, 1,500 species of Mercantifida and moss, and at least 800 species of fungus. In addition, there are more than 3,000 species of medicinal plants. Bolivia is considered the place of origin for such species as peppers and chili peppers, peanuts, the common beans, yucca, and several species of palm. Bolivia also naturally produces over 4,000 kinds of potatoes. Bolivia has more than 2,900 animal species, including 398 mammals, over 1,400 birds, 70% of birds known in the world, being the sixth most diverse country in terms of bird species, 204 amphibians, 277 reptiles, and 635 fish, all freshwater fish, as Bolivia is a landlocked country. In addition, there are more than 3,000 types of butterfly, and more than 60 domestic animals. Bolivia has gained global attention for its law of the rights of Mother Earth, which accords nature the same rights as humans.
Politics and government.
Bolivia has been governed by democratically elected government since 1982, when a long string of military coups came to an end. Presidents Hernan Siles Sozo, 1982-85, and Victor Paz Estenssoro, 1985-89, began a tradition of ceding power peacefully, which has continued, although two presidents have stepped down in the face of popular protests, Gonzalo Sanchez de Lozada in 2003 and Carlos Mesa in 2005. Bolivia's multi-party democracy has seen a wide variety of parties in the presidency and parliament, although the Revolutionary Nationalist Movement, National Democratic Action, and the Revolutionary Left Movement predominated from 1985 to 2005. The current president is Evo Morales, the first indigenous Bolivian to serve as head of state. Morales' Movement for Socialism, political instrument for the sovereignty of the People's Party, was the first to win an outright presidential majority in 4 decades, doing so both in 2005 and 2009. The Constitution, drafted in 2006 July and approved in 2009, provides for balanced executive, legislative, judicial, and electoral powers, as well as several levels of autonomy. The traditionally strong executive branch tends to overshadow the Congress, whose role is generally limited to debating and approving legislation initiated by the executive. The judiciary, consisting of the Supreme Court and departmental and lower courts, has long been riddled with corruption and inefficiency. Through revisions to the Constitution in 1994, and subsequent laws, the government has initiated potentially far-reaching reforms in the judicial system, as well as increasing decentralizing powers to departments, municipalities, and indigenous territories. The executive branch is headed by a president and vice president, and consists of a variable number, currently 20, of government ministries. The president is elected to a 5-year term by popular vote, and governs from the presidential palace, popularly called the Burned Palace, Palacio Quemado, in La Paz. In the case that no candidate receives an absolute majority of the popular vote, or more than 40% of the vote with an advantage of more than 10% over the second-place finisher, a runoff is to be held among the 2 candidates most voted. The Assembly Legislativa Plurinational Legislative Assembly, or National Congress, has 2 chambers. The Cámara de Diputados, Chamber of Deputies, has 130 members elected to 5-year terms, 70 from single-member districts, circumscriptions, 60 by proportional representation, and 7 by the minority indigenous peoples of 7 departments. The Cámara de Senadores, Chamber of Senators, has 36 members, 4 per department. Members of the Assembly are elected to 5-year terms. The body has its headquarters on the Plaza Murillo in La Paz, but also holds honorary sessions elsewhere in Bolivia. The vice president serves as titular head of the combined assembly. The judiciary consists of the Supreme Court, the Constitutional Tribunal, the Judiciary Council, Agrarian and Environmental Tribunal, and district, departmental, and lower courts. In October 2011, Bolivia held its first judicial elections to choose members of the national courts by popular vote, a reform brought about by Evo Morales. The Plurinational Electoral Organ is an independent branch of government which replaced the National Electoral Court in 2010. The branch consists of the Supreme Electoral Tribunal, the 9 departmental electoral tribunals, electoral judges, the anonymously selected juries at election tables, and electoral notaries. Wilfredo Ovando presides over the 7-member Supreme Electoral Tribunal. Its operations are mandated by the Constitution and regulated by the Electoral Regime Law, Law 026, passed 2010. The organ's first elections were the country's first judicial election in October 2011, and 5 municipal special elections held in 2011.
Capital.
Bolivia has its constitutionally recognized capital in Sucre, while La Paz is the seat of government. La Plata, now Sucre, was proclaimed provisional capital of the newly independent Alto Peru, later, Buliwya, on July 1, 1826. On July 12, 1839, President José Miguel de Velasco proclaimed a law naming the city as the capital of Bolivia, and renaming it in honor of the revolutionary leader Antonio José de Sucre. The Bolivian seat of government moved to La Paz at the turn of the 20th century, as a consequence of Sucre's relative remoteness from economic activity after the decline of Potosi and its silver industry and of the Liberal Party in the War of 1899. The 2009 Constitution assigns the role of national capital to Sucre, not referring to La Paz in the text. In addition to being the constitutional capital, the Supreme Court of Bolivia is located in Sucre, making it the judicial capital. Nonetheless, the Palacio Quemado, the presidential palace and seat of Bolivian executive power, is located in La Paz, as are the National Congress and Plurinational Electoral Organ. La Paz thus continues to be the seat of government.
Law and crime.
There are 53 prisons in Bolivia which incarcerate around 8,700 people as of 2010. The prisons are managed by the Penitentiary Regime Directorate, Spanish, Dirección de Régimen Penitenciario. There are 17 prisons in departmental capital cities and 36 provincial prisons.
Foreign relations.
Despite losing its maritime coast, the so-called littoral department, after the War of the Pacific, Bolivia has historically maintained, as a state policy, a maritime claim to Chile. The claim asks for sovereign access to the Pacific Ocean and its maritime space. The issue has also been presented before the Organization of American States. In 1979, the OAS passed the 426 resolution, which declared that the Bolivian problem is a hemispheric problem. On April 4, 1884, a truce was signed with Chile, whereby Chile gave facilities of access to Bolivian products through Antofagasta, and freed the payment of export rights in the port of Arica. In October 1904, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship was signed, and Chile agreed to build a railway between Arica and La Paz, to improve access of Bolivian products to the ports. The Special Economical Zone for Bolivia in ILO, ZEBI, is a special economic area of 5 kilometers of maritime coast, and a total extension of 358 hectares, called Mar Bolivia, Sea Bolivia, where Bolivia may maintain a free port near ILO, Peru under its administration and operation for a period of 99 years starting on 1992. Once the time has passed, all the construction and territory go back to the Peruvian government. Since 1964, Bolivia has had its own port facilities in the Bolivian Freeport in Rosario, Argentina. This port is located on the Parana River, which is directly connected to the Atlantic Ocean.
Military.
The Bolivian military comprises 3 branches: Ejército, Army, Naval, Navy, and Fuerza Aérea, Air Force. The legal age for voluntary admissions is 18. However, when the numbers are small, the government recruits anyone as young as 14. The tour of duty is generally 12 months. The Bolivian government annually spends $130 million on defense. The Bolivian army has around 31,500 men. There are 6 military regions, Regiones Militares, RMs, in the army. The army is organized into 10 divisions. Though it is landlocked, Bolivia keeps a navy. The Bolivian Naval Force, Fuerza Naval Boliviana in Spanish, is a naval force about 5,000 strong in 2008. The Bolivian Air Force, Fuerza Aérea Boliviana or FAB has 9 air bases, located at La Paz, Cochabamba, Santa Cruz, Puerto Suarez, Taricha, Villamontes, Cobicha, Riberalta, and Robber.
And administrative divisions.
Bolivia has 9 departments: Pando, La Paz, Beni, Oruro, Cochabamba, Santa Cruz, Potosi, Chuquisaca, Taricha. According to what is established by the Bolivian political constitution, the law of autonomies and decentralization regulates the procedure for the elaboration of statutes of autonomy, the transfer and distribution of direct competences between the central government and the autonomous entities. There are 4 levels of decentralization: departmental government, constituted by the departmental assembly, with rights over the legislation of the department. The governor is chosen by universal suffrage. Municipal government, constituted by a municipal council, with rights over the legislation of the municipality. The mayor is chosen by universal suffrage. Regional government, formed by several provinces or municipalities of geographical continuity within a department. It is constituted by a regional assembly. Original indigenous government, self-governance of original indigenous people on the ancient territories where they live.
Economy.
Bolivia's estimated 2012 gross domestic product, GDP, totaled $27.43 billion at official exchange rate and $56.14 billion at purchasing power parity. Economic growth was estimated to be at about 5.2%, and inflation was estimated at about 6.9%. Bolivia was rated repressed by the 2010 Index of Economic Freedom. Despite a series of mostly political setbacks, between 2006 and 2009 the Morales administration has spurred growth higher than at any point in the preceding 30 years. The growth was accompanied by a moderate decrease in inequality. A surplus budget of 1.7% GDP was attained by 2012, the government-run surpluses since Morales' administration reflecting a prudent economic management. A major blow to the Bolivian economy came with a drastic fall in the price of tin during the early 1980s, which impacted one of Bolivia's main sources of income and one of its major mining industries. Since 1985, the government of Bolivia has implemented a far-reaching program of macroeconomic stabilization and structural reform aimed at maintaining price stability, creating conditions for sustained growth, and alleviating scarcity. A major reform of the customs service has significantly improved transparency in this area. Parallel legislative reforms have locked into place market liberal policies, especially in the hydrocarbon and telecommunication sectors, that have encouraged private investment. Foreign investors are accorded national treatment. In April 2000, Hugo Banzer, the former president of Bolivia, signed a contract with Aguas del Tunari, a private consortium, to operate and improve the water supply in Bolivia's third-largest city, Cochabamba. Shortly thereafter, the company tripled the water rates in that city, an action which resulted in protests and rioting among those who could no longer afford clean water. Amidst Bolivia's nationwide economic collapse and growing national unrest over the state of the economy, the Bolivian government was forced to withdraw the water contract. Bolivia has the second-largest natural gas reserves in South America. The government has a long-term sales agreement to sell natural gas to Brazil through 2019. The government held a binding referendum in 2005 on the hydrocarbon law. The U.S. Geological Service estimates that Bolivia has 5.4 million cubic tons of lithium, which represent 50%-70% of world reserves. However, to mine for it would involve disturbing the country's salt flats, called Salar de Uyuni, an important natural feature which boosts tourism in the region. The government does not want to destroy this unique natural landscape to meet the rising world demand for lithium. On the other hand, sustainable extraction of Li is attempted by the government. This project is carried out by the public company Recursos Evaporíticos subsidiary of Comebol. Once Bolivia's government depended heavily on foreign assistance to finance development projects and to pay the public staff. At the end of 2002, the government owed $4.5 billion to its foreign creditors, with $1.6 billion of this amount owed to other governments and most of the balance owed to multilateral development banks. Most payments to other governments have been rescheduled on several occasions since 1987 through the Paris Club mechanism. External creditors have been willing to do this because the Bolivian government has generally achieved the monetary and fiscal targets set by IMF programs since 1987, though economic crises have undercut Bolivia's normally good record. However, by 2013 the foreign assistance is just a fraction of the government budget thanks to tax collection mainly from the profitable exports to Brazil and Argentina of natural gas. The income from tourism has become increasingly important. Bolivia's tourist industry has grown gradually since about 1990.
Transport.
The General Directorate of Civil Aeronautics, Dirección General de Aeronáutica Civil, DGAC, formerly part of the FAB, administers a civil aeronautics school called the National Institute of Civil Aeronautics, Instituto Nacional de Aeronáutica Civil, INAC, and two commercial air transport services TAM and TAB. TAM, Transport Aéreo Militar, the Bolivian military airline, is an airline based in La Paz, Bolivia. It is the civilian wing of the Fuerza Aérea Boliviana, the Bolivian Air Force, operating passenger services to remote towns and communities in the north and northeast of Bolivia. TAM, aka TAM Group 71, has been a part of the FAB since 1945. A similar airline serving the Beni department with small planes is Linea Aérea Amazonas, using smaller planes than TAM. Although a civil transport airline, TAB, Transportes Aéreos Bolivianos, was created as a subsidiary company of the FAB in 1977. It is subordinate to the Air Transport Management, Gerencia de Transportes Aéreos, and is headed by an FAB general. TAB, a charter heavy cargo airline, links Bolivia with most countries of the Western Hemisphere. Its inventory includes a fleet of Hercules C-130 aircraft. TAB is headquartered adjacent to El Alto International Airport. TAB flies to Miami and Houston, with a stop in Panama. The three largest and main international airports in Bolivia are El Alto International Airport in La Paz, Viro International Airport in Santa Cruz, and Jorge Wilstermann International Airport in Cochabamba.
Demographics.
According to the last two censuses carried out by the Bolivian National Statistics Institute, Instituto Nacional de Estadística, INE, the population increased from 8,274,325, from which 4,123,850 were men and 4,150,475 were women, in 2001 to 10,027,254 in 2012. In the last 50 years the Bolivian population has tripled, reaching a population growth rate of 2.25%. The growth of the population in the inter-census periods, 1950 to 1976 and 1976 to 1992, was approximately 2.05%, while between the last period, 1992 to 2001, it reached 2.74% annually. Some 62.43% of Bolivians live in urban areas, while the remaining 37.57% in rural areas. The most part of the population, 70%, is concentrated in the departments of La Paz, Santa Cruz and Cochabamba. In the Andean Altiplano region the departments of La Paz and Oruro hold the largest percentage of population. In the Valley region the largest percentage is held by the departments of Cochabamba and Chuquisaca, while in the Llanos region by Santa Cruz and Beni. At national level, the population density is 8.49, with variations marked between 0.8, Pando Department, and 26.2, Cochabamba Department. The largest population center is located in the called Central Axis and in the Llanos region. Bolivia has a young population. According to the 2011 census, 59% of the population is between 15 and 59 years old, 39% is less than 15 years old. Almost 60% of the population is younger than 25 years of age.
Ethnicity.
The ethnic composition of Bolivia is diverse. The largest of the approximately 3 dozen native groups are the Quechuas, 2.5 million, Aymaras, 2 million, then Carquitano, 180,000, and Guarani, 125,000. So the full Amerindian population is at 55%. The remaining 30% are Mestizo, mixed Amerindian and white, and around 15% are white. Indigenous, also called originarios, native or original and less frequently, Amerindians, can be Andean, as the Aymaras and Quechuas, which formed the ancient Inca Empire, which concentrate in the western departments of La Paz, Potosi, Oruro, Cochabamba and Chuquisaca. There also is an important Oriental ethnic population, composed by the Guarani and Mestizos, among others, and that inhabit the departments of Santa Cruz, Beni, Tarija and Pando. The indigenous people compose the 60% of the Bolivian population. Mestizos are distributed throughout the entire country and compose the 26% of the Bolivian population. Most people assume their Mestizo identity while at the same time identifying themselves with one or more indigenous cultures. Whites are usually concentrated in the largest cities, La Paz, Santa Cruz de la Sierra and Cochabamba, but as well in some minor cities like Tarija. In the Santa Cruz department there are several dozen colonies of German-speaking Mennonites with about 70,000 inhabitants in 2012. Whites represent 15% of the total Bolivian population. Afro-Bolivians, descendants of African slaves which arrived in the times of the Spanish Empire, inhabit the department of La Paz, and located mainly in the provinces of Noryungas and Sudungas. Slavery was abolished in Bolivia in 1831. Asians are mainly Japanese, 14.000, Chinese, 4.600, Koreans and Lebanese. There are small numbers of European citizens of Germany, France, Italy and Portugal, as well as coming from other American countries, as Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Cuba, Ecuador, United States, Paraguay, Peru, Mexico and Venezuela, among others. There are important Peruvian colonies in La Paz, El Alto and Santa Cruz de la Sierra.
Indigenous peoples.
The indigenous peoples of Bolivia can be divided into two categories of ethnic groups. The Andean groups, which are located in the Andean Altiplano and the Valley region, and the lowland ethnic groups, who inhabit the warm regions of central and eastern Bolivia, including the valleys of Cochabamba Department, the Amazon Basin areas of northern La Paz Department, and the lowland departments of Beni, Pando, Santa Cruz, and Tarija, including the Gran Chaco region in the southeast of the country. Large numbers of Andean peoples have also migrated to form Quechua, Aymara, and intercultural communities in the lowlands. Andean ethnicities. Aymara people. They live on the high plateau of the departments of La Paz, Oruro and Potosi, as well as some small regions near the tropical flatlands. Quechua people. They inhabit mostly the valleys on Cochabamba and Chuquisaca. They also inhabit some mountain regions in Potosi and Oruro. They divide themselves into different Quechua nations, as the Tarabucos, Uquimaras, Chaltras, Chaquis, Iralipes, Tiranas, among others. Aru people, Aymara people. They live on the high plateau of the departments of La Paz, Oruro and Potosi, as well as some small regions near the tropical flatlands. Quechua people. They inhabit mostly the valleys on Cochabamba and Chuquisaca. They also inhabit some mountain regions in Potosi and Oruro. They divide themselves into different Quechua nations, as the Tarabucos, Uquimaras, Chaltras, Chaquis, Iralipes, Tiranas, among others. Aru people, ethnicities of the eastern lowlands. Guaranis. Formed by Guarayos, Paspanos, Sorianos, Chiricanos, Wichi, Chalapes, Taipites, Tobas and Yuki. Tacanas, formed by Licos, Camanes, Aronas and Marapas. Panos, formed by Chacobos, Caripunas, Sinabos, Capuibos and Gacanaguas. Arhuecos, formed by Apolistas, Boers, Moxos, Chain, Movimas, Kaiblas, Carabecas, Pacanecas or Paucanecas. Chapacuras, formed by Itanes or more, Chapacuras, Sansinonianos, Canishanas, Idonamas, Uricares, Guitosis and Chiquitos. Batacudos, formed by Boros Wyatiki. Zamucos, formed by Arios, Guaranis. Formed by Guarayos, Posranos, Sorianos, Chiriganos, Wichi, Chalapis, Taipites, Tobas and Yuki. Tacanas, formed by Licos, Carmanes, Aronas and Marapas. Panos, formed by Chacobos, Caripunas, Sinabos, Capuibos and Gacanaguas. Arhuacos, formed by Apolistas, Boers, Moxos, Chain, Movimas, Kaiblas, Carabecas, Pakanecas or Paukanecas. Chapacuras, formed by Itanas or more, Chapacuras, Sansinonianos, Canishanas, Idonamas, Uricares, Guatosis and Chiquitos. Botocudos, formed by Boros Wyatiki. Zamucos, formed by Arios.
Language.
Bolivia has great linguistic diversity as a result of its multiculturalism. The Constitution of Bolivia recognizes 37 official languages, aside from Spanish. These include the languages of the native indigenous nations of Bolivia, which are Aymara, Arona, Boer, Basiro, Kanishana, Kavinino, Cayubaba, Shikobo, Chiman, Izejcha, Guarani, Guarasiwe, Gariu, Idonama, Lico, Makajai Kilauea, Macanari, Maropa, Magino Trinitario, Magino Ignaciano, Moor, Musitan, Movima, Takawara, Puquina, Quechua, Soriano, Takana, Tapiat, Toromona, Aruchapaya, Winhag, Yamanawa, Yuki, Irikir and Zamuco. Spanish is the most spoken official language in the country, according to the 2001 census. As it is spoken by 88.4% of the population, as a first language or second language in some indigenous populations. All legal and official documents issued by the state, including the Constitution, the main private and public institutions, the media, and commercial activities, are in Spanish. The main indigenous languages are Quechua, 28% of the population in the 2001 census, Aymara, 18%, Guarani, 1%, other, 4% including the Moxos in the Department of Beni. Plautdicht, a German dialect, is spoken by about 60.000 Mennonites in Santa Cruz and some Portuguese is spoken mainly in the areas close to Brazil.
Religion.
Bolivia is a secular state and guarantees freedom of religion. The Constitution establishes that the state respects and guarantees the freedom of religion and of spiritual beliefs, in concordance with their worldview. The state is independent of the religion. According to the 2001 census conducted by the National Institute of Statistics of Bolivia, 78% follow Roman Catholicism, 19% follow Protestantism, and 3% have different Christian beliefs. The Protestantism along with traditional indigenous beliefs are expanding rapidly. Most of the indigenous population follows different religions marked by syncretism with Roman Catholicism, or complementary to it with their own worldview and ancient traditions. The cult of Pachamama, or Mother Earth, as well as the adoration to the Virgin of Copacabana, Virgin of Urcapina and Virgin of Socavan, are notable. There also are important Amerindian communities near Lake Titicaca that have a strong devotion to James the Apostle. Other deities worshipped in Bolivia include the Iqueco, the Amerindian god of abundance and prosperity, whose day is celebrated every January 24th. And Tupa, a god of the Guarani people. Around 3% of the population identify themselves either agnostic or atheist.
Largest cities. Culture.
Bolivian culture has been heavily influenced by the Quechua, the Aymara, as well as by the popular cultures of Latin America as a whole. The cultural development is divided into three distinct periods: pre-Columbian, colonial, and republican. Important archaeological ruins, gold and silver ornaments, stone monuments, ceramics, and weavings remain from several important pre-Columbian cultures. Major ruins include Tiwanaku, El Fuerte Salmapata, Incalaca and Escanahuaya. The country bounds in other sites that are difficult to reach and have seen little archaeological exploration. The Spanish brought their own tradition of religious art which, in the hands of local native and mestizo builders and artisans, developed into a rich and distinctive style of architecture, painting, and sculpture known as Mestizo Baroque. The colonial period produced not only the paintings of Pérez de Holguín, Flores, Biddy, and others but also the works of skilled but unknown stonecutters, woodcarvers, goldsmiths, and silversmiths. An important body of native Baroque religious music of the colonial period was recovered and has been performed internationally to wide acclaim since 1994. Bolivian artists of stature in the 20th century include Guzmán de Rojas, Arturo Borda, Maria Luisa Pacheco, Roberto Mamani, Alejandro Mario Ilanes, Alfredo da Silva, and Marina Núñez del Prado. Bolivia has a rich folklore. Its regional folk music is distinctive and varied. The devil dances at the annual Carnival of Oruro are one of the great folkloric events of South America, as is the lesser-known Carnival at Tarabuco. The best-known of the various festivals found in the country is the Carnival de Oruro, which was among the first 19 masterpieces of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity, as proclaimed by UNESCO in May 2001. Entertainment includes football, which is the most popular sport, as well as table football, which is played on street corners by both children and adults. The Bolivian cultural heritage, Patrimonio Cultural de Bolivia, is formed by all the cultural goods, both tangible and intangible. The Bolivian state recognizes the pluricultural, multiethnic and plurilinguistic conformation of the Bolivian nation and has as one of its most important functions to preserve and protect equally the cultural heritage of all the cultures and nations that have developed, and still develop, in Bolivia.
Cuisine.
Cuisine in Bolivia stems mainly from the combination of Spanish cuisine with traditional indigenous Aymara or Inca ingredients, with the addition of later influences from German, Italian, Basque, Russian, Polish, and Arab immigrants. The three traditional staples of Bolivian cuisine are corn, potatoes, and beans. These ingredients have been combined with staples brought by the Spanish including rice, wheat, and meat such as beef, pork, and chicken.
Artistic and popular references.
The 2011 Caroline Alethea novel Plant Teacher takes place in Bolivia from 2007 to 2008. The novel explores such themes as politics, indigenous religions, and narco-tourism.
Education.
In 2008, following UNESCO standards, Bolivia was declared free of illiteracy, making it the fourth country in Latin America to attain this status. Bolivia has a wide variety of public and private universities. Among them, Universidad San Francisco Xavier de Chuquisaca USFX, Sucre, founded in 1624. Universidad Mayor de San Andrés UMSA, La Paz, founded in 1830. Universidad Mayor de San Simon UMSS, Cochabamba, founded in 1832. Universidad Autónoma Gabriel René Moreno UAGRM, Santa Cruz de la Sierra, founded in 1880. Universidad Técnica de Oruro UTL, Oruro, founded in 1892. Universidad Autónoma Tomás Frías UATF, Potosi, founded in 1892. Universidad Juan Misael Zaralco UJMS, Taricha, founded in 1946. Universidad Católica Boliviana San Pablo UCB, founded in 1966. Universidad Técnica del Beni UTB, Trinidad, founded in 1967. Universidad Naranjuar, founded in 1982. Universidad Privada de Santa Cruz de la Sierra UPSA, Santa Cruz de la Sierra, founded in 1984. Universidad Nacional Siglo XXUNSXX, La Lagua, founded in 1986. Universidad del Valle Unival Cochabamba, founded in 1988. Universidad Privada Boliviana UPB, founded in 1993. Universidad Privada Franz de Mayo UPFT, founded in 1993 and Universidad Amazónica de Pando UAP, Cobicha, founded in 1993. For the first time in Bolivian history, 3 indigenous universities were created: Universidad Aymara Tupac Katara UATK, La Paz, founded in 2009. Universidad Quechua Casmaro Huanca UQCH, Cochabamba, founded in 2009, and Universidad Boliviana Guarani y Pueblos de Tierras Bajas UGPTB, Chuquisaca, founded in 2009.
Health.
Based on 2013 The World Factbook estimates, Bolivia is ranked 161st in life expectancy with a number of 68.2 years. Life expectancy for men is 65.4 and for women is 71.1. A study by the United Nations Development Programme and United Nations International Emergency Children's Fund reported over 230 babies died per day in Bolivia through lack of proper care. The majority of the population has no health insurance or access to health care. Demographic and Health Surveys has completed 5 surveys in Bolivia since 1989 on a wide range of topics.